Do you crave exciting sports takes and news? Fed up with the same old boring voices you hear on the radio? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you just might be a TBloomaholic. Lucky for you, it's time for another episode of the TBloom Talk Show, the #1 sports podcast in the world. Settle in, my TBloomanites, because another episode starts right now. Live from TBloom headquarters, here's your host, TBloom.
Deborah, we on? Okay. Welcome back, nation! Yes, welcome back, nation, to the TBloom Talk Show. It's been a while, and I'm sorry. And from this day forward, I promise I will be here each and every single week, at least twice a week. But with that being said, we're back with an exciting episode of the TBloom Talk Show. We're going to break down the AFC South. This will be the first segment of an 8-segment series, whatever you want to call it, where I'm going to break down each and every division in the NFL to kind of show you guys what's new, what's not, what teams are going to be this, and what teams are going to be the same old teams that they were, like Cleveland. Yeah, so we're going to start off with the AFC South today. Obviously, welcome in my counterpart, old Ron the Don. He's pimped out, got his chain going. He's feeling saucy. Got little Troy bobbling around, and then a Steelers helmet that I've had ever since, well, I've been around. So with that being said, let's open it up with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Coming in, the Jacksonville Jaguars, what an interesting season they have ahead of them. Finishing last year at just 4-13, this franchise leadership, the ownership, have got to be frustrated with the way things have been panning out with none other than Sunshine Trevor Lawrence. Last year was the complete prove-it year, and he busted. Didn't show anything that he was supposed to be coming into the league, was supposed to be the next Messiah, the golden child. Hasn't quite turned out that way. And with that being said, there's a new sheriff in town, baby. That 4-13 record landed them the second pick in the draft, and they went with the Heisman, Travis Hunter. And let me branch off for a second. Travis Hunter, the foundation that he's laying right now of what he wants to accomplish in the NFL, playing both ways, receiver and corner, he's laying a foundation that if he can pull this off and do it successfully, he would be the greatest football player of all time. If he can come in and be a star receiver or a star corner, doesn't have to be a star on both sides of the ball, just needs to be serviceable on at least one side of the ball and can maintain a starting position, how could you argue against that? Obviously, you have guys like Deion Sanders who would come in and be a gadget guy on the offensive side of the ball, but it was never really a focal point or a game plan to get Deion Sanders the ball on offense. Now, what Travis Hunter wants to do is start on both sides, which is going to be absolutely unrealistic, I think. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's a really small frame to be doing that, especially this early in his career in the NFL. But I'm just saying, if he can accomplish the goal that he has set out, the framework of what he's setting out his career to be, he would have to be the greatest NFL player to ever live if he can manage to do this his whole career. Obviously, we're thinking 9-10 years at least, but I think that's just a very bold move of him to come in and say, fuck it, I'm going to do something that no one else has done. So, with that being said, there's a new sheriff in town, and his name's Travis Hunter. It ain't Trevor Lawrence anymore. Now, how is this going to affect Trevor Lawrence's mindset? Keep this in mind. Trevor Lawrence, through his whole career, we're going back all the way to junior high here. We'll start at junior high. Through his whole football career all the way to junior high, Trevor Lawrence has been the star of the show. He's been the fucking cat's pajamas, baby. He's been the bee's knees, whatever you want to call it. He's been the guy. And for the last 5 years, I believe, since he's came into this league, and he's been at training camp, and after they break the huddle and they end the practice and they all go through back to the locker room and they got media standing around, it's always been 20, 30 reporters on Trevor. He's the star of the show. They want to know what he thinks. Hey, Trevor, how are we going to be good this season? Hey, Trevor, how are we going to get the monkey off the Jacksonville Jaguars' back? That's a shit franchise. You know, all these questions were on him. That ain't the case anymore, guys. That ain't the case. On the other side, you got a guy named Travis Hunter. All those 10 or 20, 30 reporters that you had coming to you asking you questions, Trevor, now there's 5, 10, and the majority of them have traveled all the way to the other side, and they're talking to Travis Hunter. Now, how's this going to affect Trevor Lawrence? Is this going to be a good thing? Is he going to take this as a thing where he can be like, all right, pressure's off. Media's not necessarily worried about me anymore. I can focus, dial in on what I need to as a quarterback to make this team the best team I can, obviously, and to make myself get out of this slump as a bust in the NFL, because right now he's in bust territory because he was supposed to be so good. Now, if the expectations weren't as high, obviously he would be, he's a starting QB in the league, but he was supposed to be more than a starting QB. He was supposed to be the Messiah, and he's not even fucking close. So with that being said, is he going to take this as a good thing and, some of the pressure off him, or is he going to be kind of side-eyeing Travis Hunter the whole time? Like, hey, what the fuck, dude? Those motherfuckers used to talk to me. They wanted to know what I thought, what I was going to do. Now they're talking to you. Fuck you, Travis Hunter. Now, maybe not to that extent, but maybe subliminally, he's got a little bit of that going on in his head. It all depends on how he takes this limelight being kind of bestowed upon someone else and not necessarily him for the first time in his career. I'm hoping he can get it together. I don't think Trevor Lawrence is a bad guy, and the Jaguars deserve more than a 4-13 record at this point in their franchise. So I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic, probably the most interesting dynamic on this team is how all of that's going to mesh together. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence has already came out and said that he wants Travis Hunter to just play offense. So I'm sure there's chemistry there. I'm sure there's no bad blood. So things seem to be trending towards the right direction with Trevor Lawrence's stance on Travis Hunter. Keep in mind, this is a team that was 25th in the league in rushing yards per game, 26th in the league in points per game, and was 24th, tied for 24th in turnovers per game on the offensive side of the ball. So you couldn't run the ball, you couldn't put up points, and you turned the ball over. That's a terrible recipe, and that's probably part of the reason why they brought in new head coach Liam Cohen, the former Bucs offensive coordinator. We've seen what they've done in recent years, putting up a lot of points per game. Baker Mayfield obviously had a big thing to do with that, but it takes an offensive coordinator to put their players in the best position to make plays. And you got to give it to Liam Cohen for making the Bucs one of the more elite, high-potent offenses the last 2 years. They also brought in a new offensive coordinator, Grant Udensky, who his job is make this offense what it was, or what it was not last year, which was good. So the only thing they did good on offense last year is they didn't get sacked a lot. They were 6th in the league in sacks per game, meaning they barely got sacked at all, which is a good thing. It's a start. Build around that. Trevor Lawrence, he's got the most talent, the most players, or what's the word I'm looking for? The most weapons on the offensive side of the ball that he has ever had in his entire career. So you got to be looking kind of optimistic on this Jaguars offense. I think they get a lot better. They got Brian Thomas Jr., Travis Hunter, obviously, Tank Bigsby. I think they're going to get it a lot more together than they did last year. Now let's move on to the Jags' defensive side of the ball, which is pretty much no better than what the offense was last year. Last year, they were bottom 10 in passing yards per game, bottom 10 in rushing yards per game, and they were last in turnovers per game. So couldn't defend the run, couldn't defend the pass, and couldn't turn the ball over. It's a recipe for a 4-13 record for sure. Now, defensive coordinator Anthony Campanelli is changing his scheme to a more aggressive, versatile scheme than, I guess, what he had before. I'm not quite sure what that means. As a defensive coordinator, you're hired in. You have a system that you want to implement. You've sold ownership on that system that you want to implement. But now, because it's not working, you want to change your scheme. It's kind of seeming like he's probably not the guy for the job. I don't know. Maybe he is. Anthony Campanelli could be, but you should already have an aggressive and versatile approach to a defense coordinator, I feel like. But that's how they're going to attack this terrible defense and make it better, I guess. They also did make some key additions. They signed defensive end Emmanuel Ogbah, cornerback Jordan Lewis, and safety Eric Murray. Now, is that going to take them to an elite defense? Probably not, but it could step them up into at least a subpar middle-of-the-pack defense, which I guess is a step in the right direction. And say if you're an optimistic person about the Jaguars' offense and maybe they get their offense rolling, they won't have to give up the least amount of points per game. Maybe this Jaguars offense can win a few ball games for them. I think they're going to have to if they're going to be successful in even being in a playoff hunt. I got the Jaguars going to 9-8. I don't see much change in the defense for this team to be super successful. I do think the Jaguars' offense takes a step in the right direction, obviously, but even then, I don't think it's going to be enough for them to be put in that tier of even a 7th wild card spot. I mean, I just don't see it. They're going to be in the hunt, and I wouldn't be surprised if they fell into that 7th seed or maybe the 6th seed, but I think that's their top, and I just don't think they'll quite do it. I got them at 9-8 to finish this season. Okay, you got it, folks. Moving on to the Indianapolis Colts. Man, I was thinking about it the other day as I was looking through the schedules, and for some reason this came to me. But I remember looking at the schedules back in the day, and whenever you saw that little blue horseshoe arise on your schedule, it kind of struck a little bit of fear in your heart, right? Kind of gave you that, I don't know if we're going to win that one. I'll come back to that one when you're counting on your wins for your teams. When you seen that blue horseshoe, it meant something. It was something like, that's going to be a tough one. I can't quite count that as a win. That's going to be a good game, etc., etc. You don't get that feeling anymore, right? I mean, back in the day, it was Peyton Manning for a long time. Then they went to Andrew Luck, and for the last 6 years or so, or however long, pretty much since Andrew Luck retired, I just haven't had that fear in this team whatsoever. And it's kind of sad. I mean, they tried to bring in Anthony Richardson 2 years ago. He got hurt his rookie year. And then last year was sort of a disaster. He played 11 games, but he threw 11 or 12 picks and only 8 TDs. Scampered in for, I think, about 4 or 6. But at the end of the day, I don't think the Colts are even close to sold on Anthony Richardson any more than anybody else is in the league. Last night, Colts were playing a preseason game, and Anthony Richardson takes a blindside hit and then goes down with an injury, and that's kind of been the story of his career so far, is injuries. The guy's got the intangibles, 6'5", 240, can run like the wind, got arm strength like as if God gave him his arm himself, but he just can't quite put it together, and he just can't quite stay on the field and stay healthy, which I think is the biggest issue of his career, and I don't think that's saying much, but it's interesting coming into this year because then they signed a guy named Daniel Jones. Now, we all know what Daniel Jones is. He came from the New York Giants, took them to a playoff win, which was, I think, a lot more than anybody suspected him to do because he's not necessarily the most coordinated out there. We've seen that. We've seen Daniel Jones stumble and fall mid-run with nobody around him. We've seen that. We've laid eyes on that. So, I mean, we know what Daniel Jones is. He's not going to take you to a Super Bowl. He might get you a playoff win, but you're probably not going to even do anything with it. So what's the point? He can't be your starter is what I'm getting at. You have to start Anthony Richardson because you're not super sure on what exactly he is and is not just yet. Because he has that untapped potential, because he has those intangibles, and you have to bank that, hey, we were right 3 years ago when we spent a first-round pick on him. I don't think it's time to give up just yet. And if you go ahead and you do start Daniel Jones, what does that tell Anthony Richardson? Hey, we believe in you, we love you, we want you here, we think you're the guy, but we're going to put in Daniel Jones over you because we think he's going to put you in a better position to win. It just doesn't make sense. If you're going to go with Daniel Jones, you pretty much have given up on Anthony Richardson, and Anthony Richardson's probably going to give up on you guys. Now, this offense last year, they were really good at running the ball, 8th in the league, and they didn't get sacked very much. They were tied for 6th. So they had some good things going for them on offense. But when the fact is that if a 40-year-old Joe Flacco comes in and is running the offense and putting up more points than you, Anthony Richardson, the rookie, pretty much the rookie last year because his rookie year he was hurt all year. You as Anthony Richardson come in and you can't run it as good as Joe Flacco at 41 years old, there's a problem there. There's a problem. And because I see Anthony Richardson not being very good and Daniel Jones being what he is, I just don't see very much optimism for this offense whatsoever. Now you look on the defensive side of the ball, they got a new defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo. They call him the mad scientist. Apparently he has unpredictable schemes that are designed to confuse the defense. Apparently, he has unpredictable schemes that are designed to confuse the defense. Do you guys hear what I'm hearing? That's what they're saying about this guy. Now, what defensive coordinator that's been worth a shit for anybody doesn't have unpredictable schemes designed to confuse the defense? Like, they're not saying much when they say that. Isn't that the whole point of a defensive coordinator, to confuse the defense? So that's a head scratcher if that's why they call him the mad scientist. Not to mention he got fired from the Bengals last year. You're going to hire a guy that just got fired? Now, I get they were bottom 10 in the rushing yards per game and passing yards per game last year, and they needed to make a change. I just don't know if this guy, the mad scientist, is that guy. I guess they're banking on him because they had success, the Bengals did, against the Chiefs some years ago when they were making their little push to go to the Super Bowl and they lost to the Rams. But at the same time, I mean, they weren't winning games because of the defense. We all know that. So it's just kind of questionable decision-making, I think, overall this offseason for the Colts. I think, they finished 8-9 last year. I think we're gearing up for another 8-9 season this year. I don't see much change or change enough for them to jump or to go down. So that's my overall take on the whole Colts offseason. A little disappointing to me, a little underwhelming. I got them at another 8-9 season. So we're going to just dive into it. The Houston Texans, let's just get them out of the way. Spoiler alert, the Texans are going to win the AFC South this year. I don't really think it's going to be close. Here's why. CJ Strouds coming into his third year as an NFL quarterback. I believe you go back to the night he got drafted. If you were to tell him, hey, your first year you went to the wild card and got bounced by the Lamar Jackson-led Ravens. The second year of your NFL season, you went to the divisional round of the playoffs and got bounced out of the playoffs by the Patrick Mahomes-led Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead while they were on their way for a three-peat. I think CJ Stroud would be like, okay, that's not bad. And I think every single one of you guys watching right now would agree that you did not have CJ Stroud being this good, this fast. So props to CJ Stroud for that. Now, if all things go as the pattern says, he's going to end up in the wild card this year. That's a pretty good first 3 years. Now, obviously, you didn't get a Super Bowl if that's the pattern. The fourth year, you would get it. But I just want to take this time to give CJ Stroud his props and respect. And, let's dive into his third year. Last year, they signed Stephon Diggs. That whole thing is over. It didn't quite pan out the way any of them wanted it to. I think the idea was Stephon Diggs was going to team alongside Nico Collins and they were going to tear out defensive coordinators up because you had the double one, but you'd leave one-on-one, and it would just be a nightmare. Did not quite end up that way. Again, another thing that happened, Tank Bigsby went out with that horrific injury and kind of spoiled the plans on the Texas offensive side of the ball. So injuries, big reason, and a big hit on the Texans last year. Big reason why they weren't, say, a 11-6 ball club or at least a 12-win team. So can't get rid of that. But they did get rid of Diggs. They moved on. They signed two rookies, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. They're going to come in as young guns. None of them are huge prospects coming out of the college football world, but they do have talent nonetheless, and they'll grow, and I'm sure one of them will turn into at least a pretty serviceable receiver. One of the key additions that I really do like that the Texans made was they traded for Christian Kirk. Now, he's not going to be a guy that's going to take the top off of defense or be a number one at all by any means, but they don't need a number one. He's a veteran receiver who can go up alongside Nico Collins, and put some pressure on the defense and can win some one-on-one situations for CJ Stroud. So I do like that. They got a veteran, two young guys to build around. I don't think they take much of a drop-off at all in receiver, besides maybe a speed demon like Tank Dell. That would very help because obviously him and CJ Stroud have such a good rapport. One thing that they really needed to improve on this year, and they did, they were 30th in sacks per game last year, meaning they got sacked the third most. So they let go of three linemen, and they signed three linemen. They signed Laken Tomlin, Cam Robinson, and Trent Brown. Idea there is they're going to shore up the offensive side of the ball, and they also signed a new O-line coach, Cole Popovich, to come in, obviously address the situation you have here. You got a third-year quarterback who Doesn't necessarily need to rely on his legs, but when he is relying on his legs, it just gives him a whole different X factor. So you want to protect him. You want to keep him upright, vertical, not on the ground, taking a beating, because it adds up, especially in the later rounds of the playoffs, so long and so forth. They also added a new offensive coordinator, Nick Cali, who is a product of Sean McVay and Bill Belichick, formerly was the Rams offensive coordinator last year. That could, we all know about the trees, man. The Sean McVay trees, the Bill Belichick trees. What's his name over in 49ers? The head, how can I forget his name? 49ers head coach tree. You guys understand the coaching tree phenomenon and how McVay and Belichick have just blessed these guys. And I don't put too much faith into the whole tree thing. I think if a guy's going to be good, he's going to be good regardless. But you got to be excited about that if you're CJ Stroud, a guy who's been around some really, really good coaching, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and Sean McVay. So look for this Texans offense to pop a little bit more than it has. And one thing I definitely have to mention, Nick Chubb is going to be great for this offense. Joe Mixon already have injury troubles. That's fine. Nick Chubb obviously only played about half the season last year coming off of that ACL tear. This year he's had a full off season of recovery, revamped, ready to go, refresh, and he doesn't need to be exactly what he was in Cleveland to be successful or to even be elite. He was arguably the best running back in the league in his heyday in Cleveland, and obviously the ACL injury stumped that. But if he can be about 80% of that, the Texans are going to love it, because Nick Chubb is not an easy back to bring down, especially when you got other weapons that you have to worry about. You think back in Cleveland days, it was Nick Chubb. And that was it. That's who you game plan for. And even when you're game planning for him, it wasn't enough for him to, not do very well. So I think that's going to be a huge addition to this offense. So look for the Texans offense to be pretty good this year. The Texans defense, and I know that's not saying much about the offense, but I think they're going to be really, really good this year. Sorry. Moving on to the Texans defense. Now, this is a very stingy defense coming. They're all returning pretty much. A couple guys went. Biggest addition they made was CJ Gardner-Johnson at safety, but they didn't need to make any changes. They were 6th in the league in passing yards per game, 9th in the league in rushing yards per game, 4th in sacks per game, and 10th in the league in points per game, just giving up 21.4. If you, as a defense, can keep teams at about 21 points, and on the other side of the ball, you got a Texans offense that I think is going to be at least putting up 25 a game, you're going to win a lot of games, I think. I really do. This stingy defense is led by Will Anderson Jr. and Daniil Hunter on the edges, and they are going to come after you all game long. D'Amico Ryans has not fucked around when it comes to this Texans defense ever since he's came in and became the head coach, and he's done a well job, and I think that continues this year. Give me the Texans. I think they're going to make a big step. Give me the Texans at 13-4 this year. I think they make some pretty big noise. Obviously, clear the AFC South, no problems, no questions asked. I'm really high on the Texans this year. Okay, last but certainly not least, ladies and gentlemen, we have the Tennessee Titans, the absolute trashiest team in the league last year. They won it, and they won their prize, first round, first overall pick, Cam Ward out of the University of Miami. The U. Respect it. Clip that. Wow. Okay, so here we go. Tennessee did it. Tennessee fucking did it. They went for it. A draft class that was not predicated on being one for a QB. Obviously, we've seen how things played out. Cam Ward's competition pre-draft heavily said was Shedeur Sanders. He obviously fell to the 5th. So Titans, did they feel pressure to just get that QB and obviously get the monkey off the back and the pressure off the fans and stuff like that to go out and get your guy? Or do they actually believe in Cam Ward? And even if this was another draft class, they would have still drafted him over some other QBs. It's hard to tell. It's tough to tell. There's huge pressure with the first pick, but we're going to find out. But I just kind of judging around the league, I think the consensus is, or at least the feeling of it is that not many people are expecting a lot from Cam Ward. This isn't like when Joe Burrow went first overall. This isn't like when Jared Goff went first overall, or Kyler Murray, or some of these other big name quarterbacks that got drafted first, or in the first round at least. This doesn't have that same feeling around it. So Cam Ward, I'm sure, is coming in with a chip on his shoulder. And not to mention Will Levis, the guy that was supposed to be the guy before Cam Ward. He broke I think it was his collarbone or his shoulder, but he's going to be out for the season pretty much. And Cam Ward came out and said basically didn't say much about it. Hey, I can't worry about that. I got a lot on my plate right now. That's my teammate, sure, but I got to move forward. I can't worry about the last guy that was in my position. I can't. Wish him the best. I can't worry about him. I got shit I got to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that was a bad thing to say from Cam Ward at all. He was honest. He told him how it was, and that was it. So I think that's a good mentality to have if you're Cam Ward. So I will respect that for what he said there. What have they done to help him out, though? Well, they bring in offensive guard Kevin Zeitler, veteran. They brought in Dan Moore Jr. from the Pittsburgh Steelers, another veteran. So you got 2 veteran linemen. Now, they're not superstars or all-pros or anything like that, but these guys are veterans. They've been there, and you're at least going to get some shirt-up protection from 2 veterans who, have been there. You're going to help him out. Be there for him. Tuck him in at night. Pick him up when he's down. The little things. They've also surrounded him with 2 veteran receivers. You got Van Jefferson and Tyler Lockett from the Seahawks. I really like the Tyler Lockett one. I think he's been one of the more underrated receivers throughout probably his career. He's made so many clutch plays for Seattle and crazy catches. He's a sure-handed receiver and a guy you don't have to worry about in the locker room, a true leader, veteran, and I think he's going to help Cam Ward progress and be a sort of a safety blanket for Cam Ward when he needs it. Not to mention these 2 are going to be paired up with old Calvin Ridley. It hasn't necessarily panned out the way he would have liked it to, coming off his suspension for a year for gambling. But Calvin Ridley still got some burn on him. I think you can see a couple big plays coming from him and Cam Ward. Now, personally, I think this is not going to necessarily be one of the most potent offenses. I think there will be flashes because there is some talent there. But at the same time, we got a lot of film we got to catch up on with Cam Ward. Now, this may change during the preseason, but right now, I don't see it changing very much. I don't think that this team is going to be 3-14 necessarily. You look on the defensive side of the ball, they made improvements at the safety position with Xavier Woods, and on the D-line, last year they were first in the league in passing yards per game on the defensive side of the ball, which is sneaky good. Sneaky good. I mean, if you can defend the pass in today's age, that's what more could you want? And be the best at it? What more could you want? What they can do is make some improvements at sacking the quarterback, which is why they made some changes at D-line. But if you can get to the quarterback a little bit better, last year they were 29th in the league. So there's a ton of room for improvement there. But if you can defend the ball, defend the pass, and sack the quarterback a little bit better, I can see this team, don't be surprised if they're a 7-win team, 8-win team. I don't think they're going to be a 9, but I can see them being a 7, 8-win team. I think this overall division is going to be fluffing around those numbers. Besides the Texans, I'm talking the Titans, Jags, and the Colts. We're thinking like 8, 7, 6 games, 9 maybe tops, but they're going to be floating around there. But my official prediction for the Titans, they will end up 7-10. And yeah, I think they make improvements, but obviously we're a long ways away from the Titans being super relevant this year. Okay, that's going to wrap it up for this segment of the TBloom Talk Show. Thanks for joining me, Tracy. If Tom doesn't get his ass out of here in 2 seconds, I want him out. Yes, out. Sorry about that. Yeah, you can go too. Unbelievable. Employees, man, you give and you give and you give. Sure, sorry I couldn't fucking pay you last week. What do you want me to fucking do? That's why I'm making a podcast. Now you're ruining my outro. Sorry, guys. TBloom Talk Show. We'll be back next. We're going to be going over the AFC South. Okay, so get your britches on. Get your tickets because the bandwagon ain't leaving just yet. TBloom Talk Show. My co-host Ron the Don. Little Troy. My Steelers helmet. We all say goodbye. But just for now. That was a dope. That was cool.